I recently got myself a new MacBook, so I thought it is now time to talk about a couple of things that you can only do on a Mac. And the obvious one is working with the Dolby Atmos production suite, and in particular the external Dolby Atmos renderer. And this is what we're going to do today. Now, the next couple of weeks, I'm probably going to do a couple of videos talking about different aspects of the external Dolby Atmos renderer, but today I would like to focus on how to use the external renderer in order to set up a Dolby Atmos project in Ableton Live. So if you're an Ableton Live user, you are on a Mac and you're interested in Dolby Atmos, this one is specifically for you. But first of all, hello everybody. In case you're new here, my name is Michael Wagner. I teach at the Antoinette Westphal College of Media Arts and Design at Drexel University in Philadelphia. And on this channel, I talk about digital media, game design, and spatial audio. And if any of those topics interest you, I invite you to subscribe or join my Discord community. Invite link is in the description below. And since you're already at it, please don't forget to press the like button because of reasons. Now, if you're working with Dolby Atmos in Ableton Live, there are a couple of challenges that you're facing. Most importantly, Ableton is a stereo-only DAW, and Dolby Atmos technically requires a multi-channel capable DAW. So there are certain things that we can't do in Ableton Live directly. In particular, we will not be able to create Atmos beds within Ableton Live, at least not easily. But as it turns out, as long as you restrict yourself to the use of objects only, everything is actually very simple and very straightforward. And this is what we're going to do today. We're only going to use objects. And this is, by the way, also the way Dolby recommends the use of Ableton in connection with Dolby Atmos. However, a little announcement. Next week, I'm going to release a follow-up video to this video where I'm going to show you how you can actually trick Ableton into creating a 7.1.2 Atmos bed, so that you can actually use Ableton pretty much like any other multi-channel DAW and have the full capabilities of Dolby Atmos. This is going to come next week. Today we're going to stick with the basics. Today we're only going to do objects. Today we're going to do it in exactly the way Dolby recommends the use of Ableton Live in connection with Dolby Atmos. But let's first talk about what exactly you need in order to follow this video. Well, first of all, obviously you need Ableton Live, and then you need to be on a Mac, because once again, the Dolby Atmos production suite only works on a Mac. And then you need the Dolby Atmos production suite. You get that through the Avid site, so where you would normally purchase Pro Tools, you can also purchase the Dolby Atmos production suite. It costs $299. If you are a teacher or a student, you can actually get it for $99, which is fairly inexpensive. That's the way I got it. And I should also mention that recently Avid changed the model, the pricing model, or the structure of their products. And Pro Tools, the basic version of Pro Tools, now comes with Atmos capabilities. And as it turns out, if you purchase a subscription to Pro Tools Studio, which is actually not that expensive at all, you also can purchase the Dolby Atmos production suite for $99. So if you are not a student or a teacher, you might consider just getting the subscription for Pro Tools Studio and then essentially adding the Dolby Atmos production suite, which is relatively inexpensive. Now, I should mention that you need version 3.7 of the Dolby Atmos production suite. And I'm mentioning that because when I log into my Avid account, I only get access to version 3.5 through Avid themselves. That might be because of the time when I purchased the Dolby Atmos production suite. It might just be that they don't update it. I'm not completely sure. But if you don't see version 3.5 on the Avid site, what you would need to do is you would need to go to Dolby directly, and you can essentially download the Dolby Atmos production suite by logging into your Dolby developer account and just downloading a trial license, and the trial license will be unlocked with the license key that you have. Once again, we need version 3.7. If you have version 3.5, you are going to run into certain issues, especially on the newer Macs with the newer operating system. Now, with that being said, let's get right to creating some Dolby Atmos in Ableton Live. Now, the way I'm going to start this today is with a very simple Ableton Live project. Now, if you've been watching my videos for a while, you're already familiar with those loops. I've started using them with the Audio Kinetic Wise tutorials that I did. These are two loops that come with the Elastic player from Uberschall with the demo bank, and they have a very liberal licensing agreement. That's why I like to use them. Let's just have a brief listen on what we have here. So essentially we have a synth part, and then essentially we have some keys that are coming in. And we're going to use them as two objects in a Dolby Atmos project. Once again, we can't really do a bed, at least not directly. We're going to work with objects only. So the first thing we need to do is we need to open up the Dolby Atmos renderer and connect the renderer to the Ableton Live session that we have. So let's open up the renderer. And Once again, you need version 3.7. If you have an earlier version, there are certain things that don't work exactly the way they should. But if you have version 3.7, you should be fine. So first thing we need to do is we need to establish communication between Ableton Live and the Dolby Atmos renderer. The way this is done is through the Dolby Audio Bridge. So in the live settings, preferences and settings, we need to change the output device to be the Dolby Audio Bridge and the input device also to be the Dolby Audio Bridge. Now, if that does not show up, this is one of the things that happens if you have an earlier version of the Dolby Atmos renderer. When I initially prepared these videos, I could not get the Audio Bridge to show up, and it turned out that was simply because I had version 3.5 and there were certain security features that did not allow the Dolby Audio Bridge to be recognized for some reason. But if you have version 3.7, that should be fine. The next thing we need to do is we need to configure the output. So in the output configuration, you need to select, and in Dolby, as you remember, we have 128 channels. These 128 channels correspond to 10 bed channels and then 118 object channels. So you need to enable all these outputs. Unfortunately, you need to click them one by one, but you only have to do that once, fortunately. It remembers, or Ableton remembers exactly. So we need to, the first 128, we need to select the stereo outputs, and the last two, 129 and 130, we need to choose as mono outputs. This is going to be the channels that we're going to use in order to communicate time code with the Dolby Atmos renderer. So click OK, and then we essentially should be set up to connect to the Dolby Atmos renderer. The second thing we need to do is we need to synchronize Ableton Live with the Dolby Atmos renderer, and the way this is done is through a plugin. That's the LTC plugin, the timecode plugin, that communicates the timecode from Ableton Live to the Dolby Atmos renderer. Now, unfortunately, at least at the time of recording, the LTC plugin was not yet M1 capable. So it was not a Apple Silicon native plugin. And it also didn't really show up in Ableton if I run Ableton in native mode. So in order to actually access that particular plugin, what you need to do is you need to put Ableton into Rosetta mode. The way this is done is by simply going to the info settings. Let me just open the application here. So if you right click on the Ableton Live and you click on Get Info, you need to essentially make sure that Open using Rosetta is enabled here. This, once again, at the time of recording, when you're watching that in a couple of weeks or months in the future, in all likelihood, the LTC plugin is already M1 capable or already native to Apple Silicon. And if that's the case, you don't have to do that. Just check if you see the LTC plugin. If you don't see it, then you essentially need to enable Rosetta mode. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, let's add an additional track here. Let's go into Create and let's create an audio track. And on this track, we are only going to use that in order to communicate the time code. So on this, we are going to add the LTC plugin. So let's search for Dolby. And in Dolby Laboratories, we have I think I need to use the VST3 version. Okay, here we have it. There's the LTC generator. So we're going to put that here on this particular track. And then we need to do a couple of settings. First of all, we need to make sure that Ableton and the Dolby Atmos production suite work on the same frame rate. Now, if you're only doing Dolby Atmos music, this is probably not going to matter to you that much. It is important if you're working with video, but you still need to make sure that they are on the same frame rate. So we need to set the frame rate. Now, I already know the frame rate that Dolby Atmos renderer is using, and that is 33.967 frames per second. So that's the way I set it. If you can change that, essentially the way to change that is by going into the Dolby Atmos renderer and going to the preferences. And in the preferences here, you can essentially set the frame rate. Just make sure that the frame rate in the Dolby Atmos renderer is the same as in the LTC plugin. If it is not, it's going to throw you an error, and then you can simply fix that. So that's the first thing that we need to do. Then we need to make sure that the signal is also sent to the, let's click that away. Then we need to make sure that the signal is also sent to the Dolby Atmos renderer. And the way to do that is by sending it to output number 129. So as we said before, 129 and 130 are the two outputs that we're going to use in order to communicate timecode information. We're going to use 129 here. So we are going to say the output is going to be an external output here, and the output that we're going to choose, we need to scroll down all the way here. And we are going to choose 129 here. And that should take care of that. Now, if we now play everything, it should already kind of be sent to the Dolby Atmos render. Let me just check if everything is playing. And as we can see, we're already getting audio to the Dolby Atmos renderer. The timecode is also communicated correctly, so everything is working fine. Currently, we have not yet set up any objects. So the information is essentially sent to the channels 1 and 2. Those are the main output channels that are set by default. And what we need to do is we need to simply reroute them to the objects and pan them accordingly. So the next thing we need to do is we need to send the audio to the appropriate objects in the Dolby Atmos renderer so that they are also recognized as objects. And the way this is done is by using the Dolby Atmos Music Panner. And this is a plugin that essentially is installed with the Dolby Atmos production suite, at least with the latest version. If you have an older version, I think you need to download the plugins separately from the Dolby Professional site. But if you're installing version 3.7 and above, they are actually included. So let's drop the music panner to our 2 tracks. So we're going to drop that here onto our synth track. Let's close that again, and let's drop also the second one to the keys track. So let's go back to our synth track and let's open up the corresponding panning plugin. And the first thing we need to do is we need to select what object pair we are going to send that to. And obviously objects start at channel number 11. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with 11 here. So we're going to send it to 11 and 12. So left channel is going to 11, right channel is going to 12. And so let's see what's happening now. Now already in the object in the Atmos renderer, I already see these objects recognized. However, if I now play everything, so let's play that again. I'm not yet seeing any audio coming into these objects, and the reason for that is because currently we are only sending the panning information to these object channels, but we're not really sending the audio. Now, in order to send the audio to those channels, what we need to do is we need to go into the routing section here in Ableton, and instead of routing to the master, we need to route to the external output directly. And what we're going to do is we're going to route that to channels 11 and 12. And once we have done that, we now not only get the panning information into the Dolby Atmos renderer, we also get the audio information in the Dolby Atmos renderer. So we already have some action here on objects 11 and 12. And I can actually move those around. So let me just go into the Dolby Atmos music panning plugin, and let's just move them a little. And I see the corresponding information that the objects have been moved also in the Dolby Atmos renderer. So everything is already set up correctly. So let's do that for the second one as well. So we have the keys here, and for the keys, what we're going to do is we're going to send that to the object pair 13 and 14. 11 and 12 is now grayed out because we already used those. So we're going to send it to 13 and 14. And we're also going to, in addition to that, send the audio to external out in the channels 13 and 14. And that should now essentially send both objects into object channels in the Dolby Atmos renderer. So we now have the synth on channel 11, 12 and the keys on channels 13 and 14. And we see these 4 essentially kind of sound sources in the Dolby Atmos renderer. Now at this point you can obviously get creative and move your sound sources around. One nice feature about the Dolby Atmos panner is that you can actually also sequence your position. So there's a little bit of a sequencer there that allows you to essentially sequence your sound positions or the positions of your sound sources. I'm just going to move things around a little, so maybe kind of move it up just slightly. And I'm going to do the same thing for the keys as well. Here we have the keys, and let's move that up a little. And then essentially we see that in the Dolby Atmos panel, so the one thing that's a little bit annoying is the fact that I constantly need to switch between windows here in order to get the essentially the view. But we see sort of the 4 sound sources here, and then essentially you can get creative with that. So now you know how to use Dolby Atmos objects with Ableton Live, and kind of the question now is, how do I, once I've done everything and I've essentially created my little music piece in Dolby Atmos, how do I actually export it? And fortunately, that's very straightforward to do, and that is done by essentially recording the Dolby Atmos project through the Dolby Atmos renderer. So let's have a look on how this is done. For that, we need to go into the Dolby Atmos renderer, and the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a new master file. So we go up to the menu and say create a new master file, and we can give it a name. Doesn't really make any difference. Let's call that Atmos test, and we're going to create that. And the first thing that we need to do is we need to press the record button, and that essentially is sort of a record enable, really. If you do that, as soon as we're playing the file in Ableton Live, it will actually start recording that. So if we press the record button, it is now in record mode and it can record. You can also set in and out points. We are not going to do that here, but essentially what you would do is you would simply kind of select the exact time code at which you want to the recordings to start, and what time code you want the recording to stop. Once again, we're not going to do that here. I'm just going to kind of press the play button. It's important that this blue button here is set. That means that the time code is essentially coming from Ableton Live. And then all we really need to do is we need to press the play button. Now, the one thing that you need to be aware is that it takes the Dolby Atmos renderer a little bit until it catches up. So if you're doing this type of recording, make sure that you have a little bit of opening time where essentially there's some silence because it, once again, it doesn't start immediately. It takes a little bit until it catches up and then starts recording. So let's just record it now. I'm going to kind of turn off the loop here and just going to start recording here. It's now recording everything. Okay, and let's press the stop button. And that essentially stops recording here. And we now have the master file created. And we can actually play that master file. What we want to do is, if we want to play that master file, we need to disable the time code coming from the Ableton Live, because we now want to essentially have the time code coming directly from the master file itself. So I'm disabling this time code settings here, and then I have the play and pause button, and I can essentially play the master file here. I can check if everything has been recorded correctly. I see the distribution in the individual speaker layout, how the speakers essentially are firing up. And then let's press the stop button, and essentially you have your master file. Now, the nice thing about working with the Dolby Atmos renderer is that it is now also very easy to create the MP4, the dreaded MP4 that is encoded in Dolby Digital Plus with joint object coding, because the external Dolby Atmos renderer has this capability natively built in. So in order to access that, all we really need to do is we need to go to the file section, say export audio, MP4, and that will essentially create an MP4 in DD plus JOC encoding. And we can simply say we don't really have a film here, we just have music, and let's just export that. And that will now export the master file in MP4 format. And the nice thing about this MP4 format is that it's sort of backward compatible, so you can actually play that on any system. And it will play back regularly if it's a non-Atmos capable system. And if it is an Atmos capable endpoint, it will actually reconstruct the Atmos experience and kind of give you the full Atmos impression. And I now have that MP4 here, and I can essentially play that. And it also plays back perfectly. So as you see, everything is very straightforward, really. As long as you're sticking to objects and you're limiting yourself to objects, the way this works is very convenient, very easy to do, very easy to set up. Not that expensive either. You know, kind of you just have to purchase the Dolby Atmos production suite, which once again, for teachers and students is very inexpensive. And if you have a Pro Tools subscription, you can actually get that very inexpensive as well. But the one thing that we are still kind of missing is how can we add a bed? Currently, we don't really have a bed. Now, for most music productions, it might not be a big deal to not have an Atmos bed, but maybe we want to add a little reverb and we want to create a bed for that purpose so that we have a full reverb that kind of is a kind of filling the entire space. At the moment, we don't seem to be able to do that. However, there is a little trick that we can do, and we can actually add a bed in Ableton Live in a way that is actually very convenient. And this is what I'm going to show you next week. But this is everything I wanted to say today. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, if you liked the video, please don't forget to press the like button. And if you are interested, if you have any questions, please use the comment section below or join my Discord community. And the link is in the description below. And once again, next week, I'm going to show you how to add a bed to that particular setup, which is actually pretty neat. And until then, see you.